Hello, this is Adam Bernard with AutoPerspectives, and welcome once again to our weekly news roundup. Let's get started with something fun and interesting. If you know me, you know that my personal fleet includes a 1972 Austin Mini 1000, which is Canadian spec. So I have an affinity for fun small vehicles. So I was quite intrigued to read about Dacia's hip new EV, known appropriately enough as the Hipster. If you're not familiar with Dacia, Dacia is a Romanian brand that was known for doing very inexpensive vehicles. Renault purchased the company in 1999 from the government and has added them to their roster. So Dacia anchors the lower end of the Renault portfolio. This Hipster explores opportunities for what's been called an e-car, which is kind of a counterpart to Japan's K-car, and that's K as in K-E-I. K-car in Japan is a vehicle that's limited by length and width and engine displacement, and gets special parking privileges and other goodies from the government. This vehicle is somewhere between what Europe calls a quadricycle, like the Citroën Ami, and a traditional mini car, like the upcoming Renault Twingo. Now, Dacia says, along with some other automakers, that European regulations have gone too far when it comes to automobiles, especially for small cars. They note that 100 regulations have been added since 2010, and 100 more are expected by 2030. And these add mass and cost. And we all know there's an affordability issue in the auto industry, and that is true no matter what country you go to in the world. The Hipster is actually shorter and slightly wider than a classic Mini like mine, but it does claim room for 4 and up to 500 liters of cargo. So yes, if you fold the rear seat, you can actually fit a washing machine in the back. Curb weight is claimed at less than 1,800 pounds. That is amazing for an EV. It's around the weight of a Mazda Miata, so certainly not a heavyweight by any stretch of the imagination. Now, Dacia's overall goal was to have the carbon footprint over the entire life cycle of the vehicle compared to a traditional small 4-passenger EV hatchback. It only comes in a single body color, like the new Slate. There's only 3 painted parts overall on the outside of the vehicle, and if you look closely, you'll notice that's not a door handle, it's actually a fabric strap. So you don't even have a mechanical element there, so that reduces cost and mass. There are minimal overhangs and minimal tumble home to maximize interior and cargo space. Like the original Citroën Docevo, it has sliding glass windows. This both eliminates hardware and mass and allows slimmer doors, which again allows more interior space. If you look closely, the tail lamps are actually mounted behind the upper portion of the split tailgate, so they do not require their own lenses. That also takes cost and mass out of the vehicle. Once you get inside, it is equally minimalistic, but not without a splash of color here and there. You'll note that there is a fairly minimalistic digital instrument cluster right at the base of the windshield. So like the newer Peugeot iCockpit setup, you actually look over the top of the steering wheel to see your instrumentation. And then in the center, there's not a touchscreen, but there is a dock for your smartphone. So that's where all your infotainment and accessories come from. The seat frames are exposed, and it is a front bench seat, which makes things simpler. Dacia also has created something called U-Clip, which is evident in Dacia's current production portfolio. These are accessory mounts for a variety of things. And that might include a cup holder, an armrest, a Bluetooth speaker, or extra lights. And there are 11 of these scattered throughout the interior of the Hipster. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of technical specs. We don't even know how fast it goes. We don't know what kind of motor it has. But they do note that it only needs to be charged twice a week. And they also claim the average daily drive is about 24 miles. So if you do the math, it suggests that a full charge is likely to take the Hipster well under 100 miles. So is this an ideal second, third, or fourth car? Probably. They have not committed to anything like this right now. We do know that Dacia will get a version of the Renault Twingo E-Tech that will go on sale next year, but nothing below that. But this does represent an interesting opportunity, and this makes Renault Group the first automaker to explore the opportunity for this e-car, which still has yet to be actually legally defined. So we'll see what happens next. We will go to the other end of the automotive spectrum with the Ferrari Elettrica. This is, appropriately enough, the name that Ferrari has apparently given to the electric vehicle. The kind of most obvious name you could come up with for a Ferrari since, well, LaFerrari. Ferrari first announced their EV back in June of 2022. They initially targeted a launch of this year, and the plan to sell 40% of their volume as pure electric by 2030. Last fall, the name was announced as Elettrica, with plans for a technical preview this year an interior concept early next year, a full reveal in the spring, and then sales beginning in 2026. So yes, there has been a bit of a delay. And more importantly, their 2030 sales target is now only 20% EVs, not 40%. There have been rumors that a second electric Ferrari, a sports car, was in the works, and that has been either canceled or at least delayed. So during Ferrari's recent Capital Markets Day, they shared a lot of the technical goodies behind the Elettrica. Over 60 patents have been filed, including one around noise. Now, there's been a lot of debate in the industry over the use of fake engine sounds or any kind of fake sounds that accompany an electric vehicle, which of course normally is just very, very quiet. Ferrari felt that fake engine sounds were not appropriate, and if you're going to make noise that comes from the vehicle itself. So what Ferrari has done is use a high precision sensor mounted on the rear axle to pick up the frequencies of the powertrain and amplify them like an electric guitar, so that the noise you hear is not a synthesized sound. It is actually the sound of Ferrari's in-house developed electric motors amped up, so everyone gets a chance to hear it. Ferrari also has their new torque shift engagement system. It lets the driver select 5 power and torque levels with the right paddle attached to the steering wheel, while the left paddle adjusts the regenerative braking in 5 different levels as well. It is a quad motor setup, 2 143 horsepower motors up front with disconnect capability, 2 421 motors at the back. Again, all of them developed in-house. So we're talking about well over 1,000 horsepower total and a target of 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.5 seconds. It is an 800 volt architecture, so it will charge very quickly. It is a pretty sizable 122 kilowatt hour battery. We don't know if that's net or gross. It is a Ferrari designed pack, and they claim an industry best 195 watt hours per kilogram and a curb weight of just over 5,000 pounds. That's around the same weight as a Maserati Gran Turismo Folgore, but you'll note that this Ferrari here is more of a 2+2 GT, so it's a little more functional than the Maserati. The all-new platform is claimed to use 75% recycled aluminum. It also, for the first time for Ferrari, has a separate rear subframe to reduce NVH, and it uses an evolution of the F80's active suspension. So it is similar conceptually to the Ferrari Pro Sangue, maybe a little less upright. And with the driver is mounted closer to the front axle, gives it a little more of a mid-engine proportion. So if you remember the old Ferrari Mondial, for example, one of those rare mid-engine four-seaters. But again, this is, of course, purely electric. It's rather a spiritual successor to, if anything, the GTC Lusso shooting brake. It should be worth noting that Aston Martin's first EV, which is based on Lucid technology, has been delayed from basically now till somewhere later in the decade. Lamborghini has not yet committed on the Lanzador, which was supposed to launch in 2 years as an electric vehicle. That now appears to be delayed and may launch as a plug-in hybrid instead. So that puts Ferrari out front among the high-end performance brands with this super high-performance electric vehicle. And we expect to get more details next spring. So we'll see how it all shakes out. And we'll finish up with a comparison between two value-oriented EVs. The first is what I'd call Bolt 2.0. The vehicle formerly known as the Chevrolet Bolt EUV is now simply the 2027 Chevy Bolt. A little over 2 years ago, Chevrolet announced a, quote, next generation, unquote, Bolt. And then in July, they released a couple of teaser photos. And then last week, rather than have a formal press announcement or a formal launch on YouTube, Chevrolet invited a bunch of Bolt owners to see the new car. And that apparently was the big reveal, because they took some photos and video and it went out online, and then stuff kind of leaked out, and it was all very soft and a little unfocused. Along with the info that has since come out is the basic price at $29,990, which puts it, of course, under $30,000, which had been the target. But Chevrolet has also announced that this Bolt will only be available for a, quote, limited time. 6 months, 1 year. Don't really know. That wasn't part of the plan that they announced 2 years ago. And certainly looking at the vehicle, it's clear to see this is less of a next generation vehicle and more of a mid-cycle update. The front and rear ends have gotten restyled, but all the basic sheet metal and glass is still there. There is a new RS variant. That's the red vehicle here. That's a little sportier looking, but not sportier driving or faster. There's a new instrument panel with more and bigger screens. But unfortunately now it loses CarPlay, which again puts it now at a disadvantage against several competitors. It does pick up an NACS port, and it triples the fast charge rate from about 50 to 55 kilowatts up to 150 kilowatts, which makes it much more competitive, much better to take on a long distance drive. It's also now V2H capable, so you can plug things into it, including your home if you have a power failure. And it does retain Super Cruise, so it is one of the least expensive, if not the most least expensive vehicle on the market with hands-free driving capability. The range jumps just a bit, about 5% to 255 miles. And there is a new 210 horsepower motor up front, which is A, a little more powerful, and B, it is now sourced from the other Ultium EVs like Blazer and Equinox. Now, it should be noted that GM killed the Cadillac XT4 to make room for the Bolt at its Fairfax plant. And then they also announced recently plans to bring the Equinox from Mexico to Fairfax in late 2027. Now, we do know the Bolt will launch with batteries from CATL from China. These are lithium iron phosphate batteries, and so they will come with a tariff cost with them. And like everyone else, GM was probably hoping the $7,500 incentive would stick around. But unfortunately it didn't. And now more recently, they have postponed plans for a second shift at Fairfax due to changing market conditions, which you can read as expected reduced demand for the Bolt. And then finally, the change in government emission regulations mean that the Bolt is probably not as necessary for GM as it once was. And this all ties around to that phrase, available for a limited time only. This is probably not a moneymaker for General Motors, and if they don't really need to worry about meeting emissions regulations anymore, the limited time phrase was added because they're probably going to try to stop production as soon as they can. We don't know when that's going to happen, and with the Equinox not coming into the plant until the end of 2027, we don't know what's going to happen between the time the Bolt ceases production and the gasoline-powered Equinox comes in. So we'll have to wait and see. Of course, it also raises the specter of long-term serviceability and parts availability, not unlike Cadillac's CT6. The good news, a lot of the parts that you see here come off the Bolt EUV, but there were some new bits added, notably the instrument panel and some of the electrical bits underneath. So, good news for folks looking for an affordable EV, but it looks like you may have to act fast if you want to get one into your driveway. Now, the contrast here is with Tesla. Back in the fall of 2020, Tesla announced plans to build a $25,000 EV with what they called an unboxed manufacturing strategy. Fast forward 4 years, and Reuters announced that the program had been scrapped from various sources. Elon Musk then later said they were lying. And 6 months later, he pretty much confirmed the cancellation and said a $25,000 EV was, quote, pointless, shortly after unveiling the $30,000 two-passenger Cybercab. He then announced that they are working on something more affordable. It would launch in the first half of 2025, and saying that it will, quote, utilize aspects of the next generation platform as well as aspects of our current platforms. Well, now we're in the second half of 2025, and we are finally seeing the vehicles, known as the Model 3 and the Model Y Standard. Is there any aspect of the next generation platform, this new unboxed vehicle, in evidence? In a word, no. It's interesting that Tesla for years said, we're not a typical Detroit automaker. We're not a legacy automaker. We do things differently. And yet they have done exactly what you might expect a legacy automaker to do. Basically take a bunch of content out of the vehicle and offer it at a cheaper price. They start at $5,000 and $5,500 less expensive than their traditional counterparts. And the things that have been taken out are, again, the sort of things that you might expect a legacy automaker to remove, some of which sound like good ideas, others a little less so. There's still a glass roof of the Model Y, but it's now thinner and it's non-UV protecting, and it's covered by a single piece headliner. Both vehicles have less power and shorter driving ranges. You get 18-inch instead of 19-inch wheels as standard. There's no auto steer. There's no light bars on the Model Y. There's no adaptive high beams. The fast charge speed was reduced from 250 to 225 kilowatts. There are fewer speakers. There's no AM/FM radio. There's no rear touchscreen. There's no rear armrest. There's no power mirror adjusters. And the seats are cloth and vegan leather. And you get your choice of either black, white, or gray with a black interior. So kind of boring. But the flip side here is that despite the fact that Tesla says we're not a legacy automaker, they arguably launched this vehicle more like Chevrolet than the way Chevrolet should have launched the Bolt. They had a teaser image. They offered up a specific launch date. They had a whole bunch of information ready to go, so all the blogs and media websites could write a coherent story about the vehicle without leaving any information out. And if you went to the Tesla website, you would find the standard models highlighted on the front page. If you go to the Chevrolet website, you will see the new Bolt on the front page, but it's there along with the other older vehicles. They don't really make a big deal out of the return of this loved, affordable EV. So when you look at them side by side, you can see, different approaches. Obviously, the Bolt comes in at about $7,000 cheaper than the Model 3 and does have more cargo space due to its body style. But yes, for $7,000, you get a vehicle that has more power, better acceleration, and a longer range. It's probably going to be a little more fun to drive as well. The other thing the Bolt offers, again, besides the cheaper price, is nationwide availability. Chevrolet will probably do pretty well selling the Bolt that they have. It's just really unusual to see how much they fumbled the launch of the Bolt based on the initial enthusiasm that they offered a few years back. So, we'll have to wait over the next few months. The Bolt is not going to be entering dealers until early 2026. So we'll probably see some additional communications between now and then. The Model 3 Standard and the Model Y Standard are available now, and we'll see what kind of a bump that provides to Tesla sales over the next quarter. That about wraps things up for this edition of Auto Perspectives. Please visit AutoPerspectives.net to check out the blog. If you like what you see and hear from this episode, please subscribe and share, and we'll see you here in a week. So long.